Hey everybody, thank you for joining. We're just going to wait a couple minutes, probably start about 5 past, give everybody a chance to get settled. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I'm Dominic Norton, the online community coordinator at Codebase. And in today's workshop, in today's webinar, we are joined by Anna Gordon from HubSpot for Starters. And we're going to be talking about building your sales foundation. This is a part of the Tech Scaler program that we have at Codebase, supported by the Scottish government. Our job is to really empower the entrepreneurs across the country, empower the founders, empower the startups to help grow the Scottish economy and build successful businesses. Before we get started, we have some housekeeping. With regards to participation, we highly encourage your active participation. Feel free to ask any questions you have using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Questions will be answered at the end of the session, so we've dedicated a block specifically to Q&A. Any question is welcome. There's no question too big or too small. Feel free to also use the chat feature. I will be sharing insights, sharing notes, sharing summaries in the chat feature as we go along. The recording and the history from the chat feature will also be shared and be available in a post-event email. Without further ado, Anna, would you like to get started?
Thank you, Dominic. So thanks everyone for joining and welcome to the session on building your sales foundations. So delighted to be back with Codebase. I did a webinar earlier this year as well. So thank you to anyone who's maybe back, or very warm welcome to anyone who's just joining for the first time. Very nice to virtually meet you. So we'll kick off. So as Dominic said, I'm Anna. I'm head of HubSpot for startups for UK and Ireland. I'm really trying to accelerate sales, marketing, and services for startups in this role. And my goal is really to help startups grow better with the right knowledge, tools, and connections needed to scale. So after this session, if you do feel free to use the Q&A function, but you're also welcome to email me at agordon@hubspot.com, connect me on LinkedIn. I'm here to really help you. So if you do want to apply to HubSpot for startups, if you're part of Codebase, there are discounts available to you. Through TechScaler, it is a 30% discount, or through Codebase or one of our other approved partners, you can get up to 90% off HubSpot. So just a little bit on today's agenda. So I will be going through the buyer persona and the role of inbound, kind of diving into the sales process. There's a lot with sales foundations. It's a meaty topic, but I really think getting that sales process right and really thinking through this either for the first time or you might be improving your current sales process is really the cornerstone of that. And then going into CRM fundamentals as well, and then ending with a Q&A. So first of all, I always talk about the buyer persona. You really want to think about what your prospect or your customer wants. It sounds basic. We've been talking about, buyer personas and inbound marketing for years at HubSpot. We really coined the term inbound, but I really do think that buyer persona, that ideal customer profile, is the cornerstone of any good marketing or sales strategy. So I always do kind of come back to this. There's a great quote from The Notebook, bit of Ryan Gosling circa early noughties. So when you talk about persona development, really a persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer. So you think about your persona, you want to list out all those details imaginable. So for you, if you're, whatever sector you're in, really thinking of who are your customer, thinking of all those demographics, how old are they, their job role, their experience, their family, their goals, their challenges, personal things as well, like what keeps them up at night, and really listing out every detail imaginable. Again, this sounds basic, but say like it's an ongoing process. So years ago in HubSpot, when we first started, about 17 years ago now, we were purely an inbound marketing automation platform, and we had one persona we chose primarily at that time, which was Marketing Mary, because we were selling to small businesses in that marketing space and those marketing personas. But fast forward now, and Marketing Mary has evolved. Marketing Mary is now Marketing Michelle, because that person has changed, that persona has evolved over time. And as well as that, HubSpot now has multiple products. So we have multiple personas because we have, marketing software, sales software, etc. So really those personas will evolve over time. So you want to know who you're selling to for that sales process and also who you don't want to sell to. So you can also have things like negative personas. So you, especially as a startup, you want to be as efficient as possible. You don't want spending time on the wrong customers who will really waste your time. So we do have a great make my persona tool in HubSpot. That's kind of the free online, a free template. Dominic, you can pop that in the chat if you want. It's a really nice, kind of easy to use graphic. With tons of templates there. So moving on, just for that brief insight into buyer personas. Three as well, just to preface all this with the role of inbound in today's buyer's journey. So really today, no secret that buyers are very much in control, and this counts for both a B2B or B2B2C or B2C sales process, right? So buyers can find the information they want before they ever engage the salesperson of that business. Say for me, if I'm, researching holidays, I can find that information, find those reviews very easily. Or if I'm reviewing a new product or service for HubSpot, again, I can Google that information and find it very easily. As well as that, buyers have gotten better at blocking out interruptive sales techniques. So it's easier for people to, apply spam filters to their Gmail, to ignore your calls. I know for me, I often think if a bot is calling me, I often ignore a lot of calls now. So you really want to reach out with intent. And buyers also have heightened expectations around the experience of buying. So this is something I'll just be coming back to again. That sales process that you're bringing people through is an experience tailored to them, really tapping into their pain points and using the principles of inbound. So here's just one buyer persona. I'll just use kind of an example now. Here's Timmy. Timmy is, we'll just say he's your average IT buyer. So you've got this kind of this is from the Make My Persona tool in HubSpot. Got Timmy's age, education, preferred method of communication. The challenges are really important because throughout a sales process, you're really tapping into someone's pain point and why they should go with your solution, not just selling the product. Also like where Timmy gains information, tools he uses, etc. So back in the day, Timmy's buyer journey was very linear. It was very focused on that sales. It might have been more like a lot more in-person selling, maybe meeting at more traditional conferences, sales call, very simple, a very simple kind of purchasing process, focused way more on sales with marketing kind of almost, people didn't always see as much value in marketing. It was seeing that thing in the beginning or the end. It wasn't really as relied on now. But now with Timmy's buying journey in 2023, you can really see there's multiple marketing and sales touch points throughout the process. And you can see here the kind of the buyer's journey, so the journey that Timmy goes on from knowing nothing about your product or your service in that kind of awareness stage to considering different options to ultimately making a decision on the product or service. So it really isn't that linear journey. It's this curve, or even as I'll show you later, it's not even as clean as this. It can be all over the place and really unique to that buyer and how they want to purchase. Today, it's not what you sell. So often, as a startup, I know I've worked like in my previous job before HubSpot, I worked with a lot of technical founders. Can get really, it's easy to get very deep into the product, but really thinking about how you sell and how to go to market and really how you're going to explain that product to people and tap into their pain points. So really our selling motion has to match the way our buyers would like to engage with us. So just to kind of preface with all that, tonight to get into kind of one of the main parts of the section is really the sales process. So just to preface this as well, because sometimes there can be confusion between, what is a sales process versus a sales methodology. So a sales process is really the specific steps employed by sales to close a new customer. In the early days as a startup, this could easily be maybe your founder doing the sales. So specific steps employed by maybe your founder or your smaller team to do that process. Whereas a sales methodology is really the philosophy that the company at large employs to grow through sales. This can be like the challenger sale, Sandler, like there's lots of different sales methodologies. We're not going to be talking about that today. It's too much to cover. But I will be going into sales process. So this is just, I'm laying out 6 steps here to try to explain this to you, but just to give the caveat that, first of all, the sales process could be different if you're selling to small businesses versus enterprises. As you scale as a company, you might have multiple different, types of sales processes and deals pipelines for your business. And, there could be shorter sales cycles for different segments as well. So the sales process will depend on your buyer persona and also the segment you're selling to. So if you're selling to small businesses, the sales cycle will of course be a lot shorter than if you're selling to enterprises where the process could be 4 to 6 months. I was actually laughing at an older slide I had done recently where it said, small businesses, sales process 60 to 90 days. There was a stat of like X% of the time there's only one decision maker. So of course as well, these buying cycles are subject to environmental factors too. So now in HubSpot, we're seeing, sales processes are taking longer and there's more decision makers being brought in earlier on in the process because people are being so selective about what they're purchasing. So that can be dependent as well. As well as that, you might want to implement some like more touchless parts as part of your sales process. So I'll get into that, but just to say, to preface this with, these are kind of 6 steps. I'm going to, tell you some of the HubSpot best practices, but it really is unique to your business model. And then after this, I'd love if you haven't already, you can, we'll share resources. You can either map out your sales process as you see it, or do an audit of your sales process and see, what can you fix. We'll share resources on that as well. So first of all, going into the first stage, so prospect. The prospect is the process of sourcing new early stage leads to begin working through the sales process. It's a really vital part of that. So we do want to obviously include that as part of this today. So when you're thinking of prospecting, you're going after, again, those buyer personas, those ideal kind of customer profiles. The prospecting might involve doing online research, attending conferences or industry events, especially in the early days, if you're getting, earlier stage customers, leaning into your existing network, getting referrals from your personal network, or maybe if you do have early stage customers, can they introduce you to someone else? TechScaler, shout out to TechScaler, great community there. I'm sure there's lots of events going on with Codebase in person as well that you can tap into. And as well as that, as you scale as a company, if you're investing in things like inbound content with like blogs, ebooks, etc., you can also utilize your existing CRM for those kind of inbound leads that are coming into you. So a lot of HubSpot, with the amount of data now we've scaled as a company, a lot of contacts are already in our CRM, so we're utilizing those contacts really to reach out. So going into the second stage, so connect and qualify. So the connect step of the sales process typically involves you initiating contact with those early stage leads to gather information. So what I'd say is probably qualifying is arguably the most important. Like, I know, of course, the demo is important, but I would argue this is almost the most important part of the sales process, especially as an earlier stage startup, if you are one. Because you don't want to waste time. Like, say you could spend, if you do like a customized demo, or you spend this time going back and forth, you don't want to waste that time on someone who isn't qualified. Maybe they're never going to buy your product or service, or they've never had the budget to begin with, or it's not a real pain for them. So like maybe they want to purchase it next year, but the timeline isn't right, or they have we come up, like our biggest competitor would be Salesforce, to say like maybe they're trying into a contract with your competitor or something like that. So really getting that qualifying early is really important. So when we talk about that connect stage, what we were talking about connect is that initial contact. So you could be calling them, contacting them over email, phone, or social constantly. So the trick here is constantly. So really being consistent with how and when you prospect. So or how and when you do these connect calls. So really blocking off time in the calendar. So if you are sending that email, so a few tips. So keep your sales email subject line short and enticing. Personalize your opening line. I'll share a couple of templates of this as well. Body copy should convey value by connecting your business to your prospect, and always end with a question or CTA. So it could be, does any of that, explaining all this, and then the CTA is maybe, does any of that resonate with you? Book time with me here. And it could be, a link if you have a meeting link, or something along those lines. A few things to avoid in these emails. So avoid spammy words in your subject lines. We actually have a blog on HubSpot of like, I can share afterwards as well, of like things like trigger the spam filter. Even more important now because Google announced this month or last month, the last month anyway, their new changes on spam filters. So effective from February, like if a certain amount of your emails, I think it's only like 0 point something percent are considered spam, then your whole domain can be blocked from sending emails. So really, really important in email marketing. Both, and this isn't just email marketing, these are sales emails as well. So now is even more important than ever. And things to avoid: no personalization. So you can create templates, you can have like the basics the same, but you don't want to reach out to someone you want to have something personal about the business. That's not just a cookie cutter template when you're reaching out. So remember with these emails, creativity and personalization. So these are a few, and we have a bunch of email templates. Dominic, if you can find the blog on HubSpot, or I can share it afterwards, basically sales email templates. But it's basically, yeah, if you can have different examples there. So as I said, a certain amount of it can be scalable. Like you don't want to be copying and pasting and creating, new emails all the time. But then you want to leave placeholders for that personalized piece. And we talk about creativity as well, like a great, I'll go into later a bit more on like tools you can use and stuff, but in HubSpot, our sales reps use Vidyard a lot. So it's a video recording tool. So basically it could be like a 2-minute video of you recording, hey, I looked at your website and I think you'd benefit from this. So using video in sales, I think that there's also stats that increase open rate. I can't remember the exact stat, but it definitely increases open rates if it's, again, that clear subject line, hey, I made a video for you, really, can increase those open rates. So when we talk about connect, it's not just over email, it can be over the phone as well. So if you do have someone's contact details, they're, maybe an inbound lead into your CRM. So with that connect call, a connect call is different to a discovery call. It's this first kind of stage of connecting with someone. So really the goals of the call are to establish your initial relationship and build rapport, understand their high level challenges, and then schedule a discovery call. So you're not going into, you want to avoid like a big elevator pitch on your company. People might just hang up, or they won't want to engage with you again. And you don't want to go into a really deep dive into how you can help. And that's because you haven't done this discovery yet. You don't exactly know what their pain points are and the best way that you can help their business. So you don't want to do that. When we go into the research stage, the key part of the stage is understanding each prospect's challenges and needs and establishing how your product or service can help. So this really allows you to offer a more tailored and personalized experience when you're doing like the demo and going through the rest of that sales process, and can really improve the likelihood of closing a deal. So really when we talk about that research stage, a discovery call is the best way to start this phase. So in HubSpot, we abbreviate to disco calls, which makes it sound more fun. So when we talk about the discovery and structure, we talk about this a lot, like in terms of sales being an art or a science. But really there are these templates you can use, there are these best practices that you can follow, and then of course as you want to customize it to your business, but you can really make it like a good experience, just unifying some of these processes across your company. So when we talk about the structure of that discovery call, so it's introduction, discovery, summary, close, and next steps. So in the introduction, you want to set clear expectations for the call with time, purpose, and agenda, as well as potential outcomes for the call. So this is kind of for anyone who's done Sandler training, this is referred to as an upfront contract. So it's not just in sales, like I even use it sometimes in partnerships as well. Like, what is the upfront contract? Discovery. So uncovering a quantifiable business challenge and the impact of that challenge or goal. Summary. So really summarizing the prospect's challenges and goals and the impact of them, both personally and the business impact. And then from there, it's really closing and next step. So uncovering what their decision-making process is, what stakeholders are involved, their budget, their timelines, kind of the age-old thing of like the BANT process, like what is their budget, and also like not leaving that call if you qualify, if you've already qualified them, but making sure there's a clear next step in the calendar. So either they need to have another call to clarify something, or the next step is the demo stage. So when we think about if you want to move them from discovery to demo, you don't always have to, like there could be drop-offs there, and that's fine. Again, you disqualified them at that stage, maybe a later stage, but in terms of the checklist, so you want to have quantifiable business goals or challenges that your product or service can solve. You want to know their decision-making process and the stakeholders that are going to be involved from their side. What is their budget? Can they actually afford, your product or service? And what is their timeline? And as I said, having those next steps in the calendar. So when we go into the presentation stage, this is typically when you run a formal presentation or demo of your product or service. So it really can be time consuming. So it comes like later on in the sales process, and you really don't want to wait, like especially if you can do either like if it's a high value prospect, you could spend time doing a really customized demo, or if it's maybe a lower value prospect, you can do a shorter, like 30-minute demo. But really don't want to be wasting your time in this process if you've on ones that that aren't worth your time in terms of money and stuff like that. You can also do things, especially as a startup, to really drive efficiency. You can also do things like pre-recorded demos. If you want to, like, if there's maybe someone who isn't quite ready for a demo, but you want to show them the product, you can also do things like pre-recorded demos to save time. So you think about the discovery stage. So as I said, it's always about thinking about the challenges, the pain points. So you don't want to just go into a demo and just demo all your tools, just say this is it. You really want to think of it in terms of these buckets. So really, and then kind of positioning the demo in that way. So really, what are the challenges that they face? So, and you should have got all this from the discovery, like you're missing a trick if you did a discovery call and didn't get some of these, these insights on challenges. So what are the challenges? And in this case, we're going to say inefficient salespeople, they're unable to quantify marketing ROI, high churn rate. What are the consequences? So what's that actual pain of not having these, having these inefficiencies? What theme can you use in your demo, and what tools will you demo? So really kind of mapping it out like this. And if we look at this in practice, we want to look at it in terms of the positioning statement, the feature, and the tie down. This is quite long. I won't read it all. I have like a shorter version as well, but in terms of positioning statement, using context from the last call. So you told me this on the last call, etc. Feature, this is exactly why HubSpot created, or insert your name. This is why HubSpot created this, do this. And then the tie down. So tie down is really important. So how do you feel increasing the ways in which you engage with your HR directors that I showed you? Well, blah, blah, blah. So we won't go into all of that, but basically if you want to break it down, again, thinking of these templates as ways to aid you in your sales process. So you told me you had X challenge on our last call. So again, using all that context from the discovery stage, this is our tool which helps X. What impact would that have on A if we did it this way? Really challenge them to think about it and using the context. So you're really tapping into their emotions essentially. And then you want to reaffirm. So you mentioned challenge X. X is costing 100,000 per annum. Has anything changed? What impact would solution Y have on it? So really tapping into that, like say, that's kind of an ROI play. So this is costing you 100,000 per annum. If you invest in our tool, this is going to have, what solution would that have? So going to the demo stage. Another one which I do have as like a specific stage is handling objections. So, and it's really important to handle these up front. So it's not uncommon for prospects to have objections to your presentation and proposal. It's actually expected. So this is why I have it as an actual step. So you should be prepared to handle any and all objections. So a lot of the time it could be to do with price, or maybe they have like like they integrate with a specific tool and they're worried about what they'll do about that. Like there can be lots of different reasons. It could be from a product or a price perspective. So really handling those objections up front and re-challenge them on the call, because you'd hate to spend all this time, do a demo, and then maybe they say they'll purchase and then they ghost you for 3 weeks. So yeah, handling those objections really, really upfront. And then obvious one, but close. So this step of the sales process refers to kind of late stage activities that happen as a deal approaches closing. So it could be, HubSpot, we have, it'd be like pricing and terms and then quote delivered. So it'd be like actually sending a quote. So yeah, that would vary by company. So when we talk about this and kind of putting it into practice, as I said, these are different stages. Take from it what you will. It could be, this is what a lot of what works for HubSpot as a B2B SaaS company. But if you're in a different realm, it really should be customized to your business. So how to map the sales process. So start at the end, set clear sales goals, bring all stakeholders aboard. And what I mean by this is, even if you're a smaller business, having the buy-in of different people throughout the process. If you want to involve people from the marketing team, from the sales team, or whoever is on your team at the time, map the sales process steps. So even do this, like get everyone together, have a template, a couple of drinks, and write it down. Also, don't forget to map that buyer's journey. So as I said, don't want to just be mapping the sales process in terms of how you view it and what your business sees as the sales process. You want to think of how the buyer is going through those stages as well, and what you want to incentivize them to do. And last but not least, implement changes, test and measure. So even if you have created a sales process, you want to, audit that over time, or see like you have a system for managing the sales process and there's like a certain bottleneck between, only 10, 20% are getting from discovery to demo. Like, is there something you can do to improve those conversion rates? So really testing things over time. And this is kind of a template. Again, I can share this. You could fill it in yourself as well. In terms of that sales process, again, unique to your business, and what are the seller's activities in that process, but also what are the buyer's activities. So yeah, what are you doing? But then also, what is the buyer doing? So I know, and there's certain ways that you can layer this process. Say, for example, you can say to someone, oh, before we get on the discovery call, can you fill in this questionnaire? And then you can tell they're kind of serious about it, and you've also gathered context before. But yeah, you can just think of both the seller's activities, as I said, and the buyer's activities in this process. So a few elements of a good sales process. So deal stages that are factual and inspectable with clear exit criteria. You don't want to, even as an earlier stage company, you want to have good practices from early on if you can, or start to implement them as you scale. So what are the criteria for moving someone from discovery to demo? I know I had a checklist earlier, but you can make it that, those criteria have to be ticked off to move it. So what are those actual exit criteria? As I've kind of said throughout the presentation, match the way the buyer likes to purchase, and then educate, don't sell. So educate them on why your solution is the best, but kind of based on their pain points. And then as well as that, always looking for kind of to improve your sales process and have efficiency throughout it. And you can do some ways to do that. So a few tools you can use throughout the sales process. So as I said, Vidyard and Loom are really good for being creative and recording videos. LinkedIn Sales Nav, but also LinkedIn Voice Notes. I know our sales reps actually use those quite a lot. People are probably used to it from, WhatsApp has voice notes I use a lot, and Slack as well, but LinkedIn Voice Notes, again, a bit more personal. Some different data gathering resources like Zoom Info, Google Alerts. You can use pre-recorded demos, again, using video where you can. We use Gong to record calls. And then, as I said, finding efficiency where you can. So using AI tools where possible. I did a whole session on AI for Codebase a few months ago. But basically for things like, how you find prospects, how you do outreach and follow up, call prep, note taking, like these shouldn't be some of these are more administrative tasks, shouldn't take time away from you actually doing the selling. And then your CRM as well. So I will go into a little bit on CRM fundamentals. So think of this more as a best practice for like, if you're thinking of taking on any tools or new software for your business, you want to first have your strategy for sales and marketing. You want to map out your sales process. Like software alone isn't going to help you to accelerate your sales. So yeah, whether you use HubSpot or a different CRM, or if you don't use CRM at all yet, just think of this as best practices you can implement with any kind of software. So HubSpot is CRM. So as the name suggests, it's a system for managing relationships with your customers, but also prospects, investors, mentors, etc. So sorry, that just skipped ahead. Often I can see a lot of startups using, these are dummy examples, lots of different chocolate bars, using Excel sheets or Google Sheets to manage customer relationships, kind of manage that sales process in terms of, do the outreach, but when are you going to follow up? But the danger of doing that is you'll only manage a fraction of that journey. So that buyer's journey I showed you earlier of like lots of maybe marketing emails, sales calls, etc. You won't be able to actually manage that in one place. So with HubSpot, it helps you really optimize each stage of that buyer's journey. So the journey someone goes on from being a stranger, knowing nothing about your product or service, to converting to a prospect, a customer, and then a promoter. So I'll just go into a little bit on sales process just to bring this to life a bit. Again, it doesn't matter which tool you use, but say if you've gone away and maps that sales process, you've spent time on that, how are you going to actually manage that? So we do have a free version of HubSpot where you can create deal pipelines. But whatever tool you're using, say if you want to configure that deal process in a tool, so you can very clearly, you've done this offline, you've understood your stages and your steps, so you can really clearly map that out here to pick things like deal probability. You can very clearly like add stages, say. Once you've mapped that out, And then you can also automate within that sales process. So say, for example, if you move someone from discovery to demo and you want them to get a certain form, or if you want to automatically, send them emails throughout that sales process, you can do that there. And this is really what it would look like. So having all of that data kind of unified in one place. So just to give you a quick insight there. And then, yeah, that's basically, I think we're perfectly on time. But just to give you a bit of insight. So as I said, I'm Anna from HubSpot for Startups. So sessions presented to you by HubSpot for Startups. We offer educational resource and tailored training. So we've a ton of HubSpot of startup friendly resources, and then we also do tailored workshops for our top partners such as Codebase. We have an integrated platform for startups and entrepreneurs. So we've over 1,000 software integrations, and then also through Codebase you can get a discount on HubSpot. So yeah, that's it. I know we covered a lot. So thanks, Dominic. Any questions?
So we have a first question. First question is how we sell to universities, which have a long sales cycle. Do you have any tips?
For longer sales cycles,
To universities.
to universities, I suppose. I think the main thing is getting decision makers involved early on in the sales process, and then also mapping out like the sales process could be between say even 6 to 12 months. I'd say really mapping out the different touch points, really like even if just really knowing the timeline in advance and having multiple touch points with them and having the decision maker involved early on in the process, I think is key.
The next question we have is, what sales paperwork should we issue for our sale? The sales are around 10K each, and we sell custom-made training videos.
Kate, can you elaborate on what kind of sales paper? I would just with sales paperwork, it's kind of broad. I mean, as you scale, like of course for HubSpot, say we'd have basically a quote with like our terms and conditions, but I just am quite sure what you mean on what paperwork. And can you share a sample sales strategy? Yes, I'll share a sample in the notes. Kate, I probably have to know a bit more about your business. Are you a startup, or if you just want to tell me a little bit more about your business model, um, scale up. Yeah, I mean, with HubSpot, we'd have different. There'd be most of the paperwork would be on our kind of our terms and conditions and on the legal side, and the kind of the details of the contract. So I can send you some examples of that. But we would have, as a large company, would have quite a lot of kind of terms and conditions in terms of paperwork, and then in terms of actually signing the quote, you'd need to check out to sign that quote. But we would have all the kind of the T's and C's attached. How frequently should you send emails? When does email become annoying? Oh, sorry, I went ahead, Dominic.
It's okay.
I was just doing it out loud. I think I don't want to say the age-old thing of it depends. If someone has shown some sort of an interest in your business, like if you've seen them on your website, then you might want to enroll them like an email sequence. So that could be a set of email over a period of 5 to 10 days. But don't be. I wouldn't say. I'd say try to be reach out with useful content and be personalized. I wouldn't be targeting the same person again and again. There's no like perfect answer for how frequently you should send emails, but you want to be careful of your unsubscribe rates as well. So I'd say don't be messaging the same person again and again in the same month. If they're not responding, give them a few months and maybe like target someone else in that business as well.
Not sure. I don't think we've done this one. Sample sales strategy.
Oh yeah, that's one I think I did. That was from Kate as well. I'll follow up with one after. I don't have one to share right now. But I think we have some as well. Fine. Thanks, Kate.
Are there any more questions from anybody? Again, there's no question too small, there's no question too silly. I know everybody has a range of businesses. Some people's businesses are B2B, some people are B2C, different types of industries might have different strategies. This is the best time to ask an expert a question that can really help your business. Maybe I'll ask the question in the
Yep.
meantime while everybody thinks. Have you got any case studies you can share, like HubSpot typical case studies of sales process and people using HubSpot's tools that have really maximize their sales potential?
Um, I mean, I can share, we have a huge case study library, so I can
Yeah.
share that in terms of the HubSpot specific one. So I can definitely share those afterwards. But typically, say on the HubSpot side, in terms of maximizing the sales process, it would be making that marketing and sales process more efficient, and then ultimately helping that company with increasing their leads. So I can definitely share, we have a huge case study library, so I can definitely share that.
Typically, we have founders and startups from a range of different stages. Some of them are scale up, some are like really, really early stage, like idea stage, some are really mature. For
Mhm.
those that are just starting their journey, when's too soon, or when should they be thinking about this sales strategy? Should this be from day one when they just about have an idea, or do they need to get a bit further first?
I'd say in terms of on the say on the CRM side, I'd say even if you're in the earlier stages and you're reaching out to contacts, I think having a CRM earlier days is good just to have all those contacts in one place. I think in terms of building out the sales process, if you're only at the stage where you're maybe a pre-seed company and you yeah you only really have like maybe those early stage customers, maybe you only have an MVP, that's probably too early. But once you start to gain some traction, you have some early stage customers, so you have more of that context to inform what your sales process should be. That I'd say that's the right stage when you're starting to gain traction and get those earlier stage customers, because then when you're building out your sales process, you can do it from that context of understanding what your personas want and what your processes look like to date. I think we have a
Did
few
we have a
more
question
questions.
other than LinkedIn? What are some good sites for finding contact details of potential prospects?
Um, I know actually our sales team just adopted Lead IQ. That is a paid one, but there are a bunch of like paid ones out there. So Lead IQ is really good. Um, and then LinkedIn, of course, which would be a free one. And then I'd say, depending on your business, like specific communities there and spaces that are relevant to your business model, like if you're in a certain industry. But yeah, Lead IQ is really helpful. Depending on your business stage, it's something we're using a lot. So there's one here. We are exporting to the EU and Middle East as international sales need a different approach. So I'd say the sales process can be the same, but the way that it's approached would be different. To say in HubSpot, I showed you like those deal pipelines, we'd have different pipelines for like, say, if we're just selling our starter products versus like our professional and enterprise suite. So it'd be a shorter sales process, but the sales process is the same for us internationally in different regions, but then the way that it's sold in those different areas would be different. So say like in some more developing in some countries like MENA, certain industries we'd lean into like solutions partners, like resell HubSpot. And we do have specific sales reps there. So I'd say the actual process, like we don't have like, 20 different processes across all our different offices. It's just that the way that the reps are different and the way they approach selling is different, but the process is is still the same. We don't have 10 different processes. Um,
I
there's
think
quite,
this
oh,
next
sorry, go ahead.
question, Yeah, I think the next question I probably best positioned to answer. So
Yeah,
Anna, I'm not sure the discount that I have in the Mighty Networks community is up to date. So we can update that, but I'm
cool.
going to drop a link in the chat so you can access the perks and discounts from being in the TechScaler community. There are many other perks and discounts, but this HubSpot one will also be there. So that should answer your question, Andrew.
Um, and then is there a prompt for Bing ChatGPT that helps get current data? Um, I'm not sure if you're talking about current data in terms of um, is it for, I don't know, for company data, say you can use ChatGPT as a handy tool for like researching researching companies like say like researchhubspot.com. So you can use it for that. I don't think it wouldn't give you the like personal data, it wouldn't give you the emails. But if you want to research a company, it can get you that. We do also have a tool in HubSpot that's powered by ChatGPT called ChatSpot, which you can use to like research companies as well.
So
So
what was that? Chance spot?
ChatSpot,
Chat spot. Okay.
yeah. So we have a bunch of AI tools in HubSpot as well. And in terms of there's a question here on the sales process for selling on a marketplace like Microsoft or Amazon. I wouldn't be super familiar with that sales process, to be honest. I would have more insights into B2B SaaS. So I wouldn't actually know much on that. But Anthony, if you want to email me after, I can see if I can get more insights internally. Lots of questions. Thanks, everyone. It's a nice interactive group.
So we spoke a little bit about the CRM and we spoke about the sales process. Are there any features that are almost like best kept secrets in the HubSpot suite? Because I know HubSpot do have a range of different features that are really interesting. Is there anything you're like, hey, founders and startups should be using this a lot more? You spoke a little bit about some of the template builders and the persona builders. Is there
Yeah,
anything that's really interesting that's underutilized?
I'd say not there's a huge amount, but I'd say not underutilized because it's newer. But I would say I touched on a little bit there, the AI tools. So and again, you can get like they're currently in public beta. So even if you have like the free version of HubSpot or the paid version, you can use a lot of them. But with I'd say like ChatSpot, like anything you can do to as I said, it can help you like research different companies. It can really help you with that prospecting process. And then we have a bunch of AI marketing tools. So like for like drafting marketing emails, you can even like even have a tool, and this would be with the paid version where it can literally create your website with AI. Um, so I'd say some of those kind of AI tools. And then even if you're going like back to basics, like as I said, you can use HubSpot for those deal pipelines, creating email templates, um, using meeting links. So loads of those like kind of even those more basic tools can really make a difference.
We have a couple more minutes. Again, keep the questions coming. There's no question too small. I think we've seen a range, and also within our ecosystem, we do have a range of different businesses. So we do have some agencies, we do have people that are building very technical businesses, we have hardware, we have software, we even have freelancers in our community. And with all those different types of businesses, would you say the actual core of a sales process is relatively consistent?
Not necessarily. I'd say it can be quite different. So I would say with the one I presented there would be more like a B2B sales process to say like for like we work with a lot of agencies and HubSpot, their process would be quite like maybe a little like they could still map those stages. Um, so I'd say it will be quite different across different businesses. You'd have to kind of really map out what it looks like for that company individually, but you can still use some of like the best practices in terms of like mapping it out. It's still going to be the core of like, you're making contact you're showing them your service, and then you're closing them. So I'd say those core principles stay the same, but it would differ across every those different businesses.
And I'm not sure if it's outside the scope of this particular webinar, but we have founders that do have sales experience, but there's going to be a lot of founders that don't have sales experience. And obviously, HubSpot have the core platform, but you also have HubSpot experts, right? And people that
Mhm.
are consultants specifically with HubSpot tools. When do you think that founders should be bringing in consultants and bringing in experts into what they're doing with their startup?
Just in terms of sales
Yeah,
experts
just
or
in terms of
consultants.
sales expertise.
I'd say again, it was kind of what I alluded to earlier in terms of like the right time to build a sales process. I wouldn't say like really early days when you're still figuring out like the product market fit, getting your early stage customers. But I'd say when you're starting to hit some of that traction and you know yourself what kind of the direction a little bit where you're going, you have those early stage customers. I'd say that's a better stage. You don't want to, especially these consultants can be really expensive, right? Like you want to be sure do you want to engage with them. So I'd say when you're starting to get that kind of early stage traction.
I think we have a question from Anthony. What are the limitations of the free HubSpot app?
Yeah, so actually, I'll see if I can just get a quick link here. So essentially we have 6 hubs within HubSpot. So not to go into all of them, but there's like everything marketing, sales, etc. There's a lot going on. And then within each of those hubs, we have different tiers. There's free, starter, professional, enterprise. So basically with the free version, you get different parts of the free CRM tool and then different parts of the marketing, etc. And the difference is essentially on like limitations to say I think you can only create either 1 or 2 deal pipelines, and like your meetings link could be watermarked with HubSpot. And then also like say on the marketing side, like once you get into the starter and the professional, like there's more automation. But so I'd say there are quite a lot of limitations, but it can be good to use if you're just like testing it out or you want somewhere to store your contact data. But there is quite a lot of so I'll just actually I'll link here. So that I think that worked.
Is it the products/sales, or is
Yeah, it's just
it okay,
hubspot.com/pricing.
okay,
And then you can
awesome.
go and if you click into just free tools there, that'll show you exactly what you get with the free tools.
I will drop that in the chat once I
Perfect.
find it. We probably have time for one more question. Does anyone have a final question to wrap up? I don't think anybody has. I think we have answered a lot of questions,
Yeah,
but maybe
thank
maybe
you.
just to wrap up, what are the what are the 3 key things that startups and founders need to focus on when they're focusing on their sales process?
Oh, put me on the spot. The key 3 things. I mean, I think it's what I've already come back to.
Yeah,
Um, the thinking about not just thinking about your activities as a seller, thinking about that buyer's journey, um, thinking about what tool you're actually going to use to capture that sales process. So where is all that going to go? And then also just looking for any ways you can save time throughout that sales process, particularly as a startup. Like you don't want to be, so that could be through tools, through like AI tools, or that could be through, spending time on that qualifying people out if they're not a fit for your business.
perfect. I want to thank you, Anna. It's been an
Thank you.
amazing session. It's always great to have you. This session was recorded, the transcript was recorded, and we will be following up in an email within the next couple of days, sharing the recording, sharing the transcript. If you have any questions, I have linked right at the top Anna's LinkedIn. So I don't I want to say they can just reach out to you, Anna,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah, no, you guys
yeah,
gonna say that. Yeah, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or
yeah,
email.
yeah.
Um,
Definitely. And thank you. If anyone also has any questions, feel free to ask questions in the TechScaler community on Mighty Networks. I'm always there. but we're always having these conversations about sales, marketing, you name it. Thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks,
Bye.
Dominic. Thanks for joining. Bye.